Hey Leo, how's it going? I hope you're ready to take some resolute action, to be decisive, because now is the time to do so. Any hesitation you might have been feeling needs to be resolved, because now is not a time for hesitating in your next steps. I'll explain. Now, before I turned on the camera, I was meditating, tuning into your vibe, your radio station, and I was just brought to this sort of hypocrisy that we can see a lot in society, and not just our modern society, although it seems to be highlighted right now, but if you study history, you can see this in pretty much every society. It shows up in one way or another. Pardon me. This whole inclusive-exclusive hypocrisy or paradox, where people claim that they want to be inclusive or create an inclusive environment, but you will quickly notice that the only way to do that is by excluding certain types of people. So the stark and obvious example is today when you want to include people from all walks of life who have all sorts of superficial differences. Differences in ethnicity, differences in sexual orientation, and these sorts of more or less superficial differences. And in order to have this inclusive group, you have to exclude people who believe differently, who have different beliefs about such things. Like, an inclusive group in this way could not include, let's say, hardline traditionalist Christians and Muslims, because they are inherently anti-homosexual. So if you wanted to have this inclusive group, you have to exclude religious hardliners. So now you have just become a hypocrite, essentially. You cannot claim to be inclusive anymore. You have to rework that, change the language you use, and be honest with what type of group you're actually trying to make, because it's not inclusive. That was a lie. That was a hypocritical thing to claim. And there's nothing wrong with making exclusive groups. Who cares? Whatever. That's up to you. You don't want to include everybody in your group. You want to create a certain group. That's within your right to do so. Just don't lie about it or be a hypocrite about it. Don't claim some moral high ground because of it, because it's not true. To an honest person, that moral high ground doesn't exist, and it doesn't matter. So maybe there's this situation where you're seeing some sort of hypocrisy with this idea of inclusion or exclusion, inclusivity or exclusivity, where there's just mixed messages, unclear signals, unannounced intentions, lying about intentions, virtue signaling, people pretending to be more ethical and moral than they actually are, people who want to appear moral and ethical when just to get a pat on the back. You might be dealing with a situation like this. And these are difficult situations to deal with because a lot of people can get swept up and have unclear, clouded judgment in moments like this, where people are claiming the moral high ground. They say a lot of things. It kind of appears like they might have the moral high ground, and people might get taken in by these people. And then it's hard to argue against them, because then they'll start throwing epitaphs at you, like, what are you, some kind of bigot? How could you not agree with this person? You sound like some type of bigot. And you're not a bigot, you're just pointing out hypocrisy. And in fact, the person claiming inclusivity, generally those people tend to be the biggest bigots of them all, and they're trying to hide that fact by, it's kind of like having a Napoleon complex, when you're like short and weak, and you try to act real tough to compensate for that. Well, I've noticed a lot of people who claim that they're not racists or not sexists or something like that, and they're so desperate to show this, what we call virtue signaling in the common parlance, are generally the most racist and sexist people, and they're trying to hide it, or they're ashamed of some racist, sexist past that they had, and now they're trying to overcompensate for it or something like that, or just hide the fact that they're still like that and just want to be like that in secret. Now, those are specific examples. It doesn't have to be about the modern liberal ethos. It can be about anything, really, including or excluding. I just saw certain types of coding languages in computer programs, certain types of engines for computer software. I don't know why that popped in, but including and excluding things like that. in a project or something. So it doesn't just have to be a social issue. It can be any type of issue where there's a paradox or a hypocrisy by framing the issue in terms of inclusivity and exclusivity for the sake of appearances. And so you're being asked to get rid of any language that is used for the sake of appearances and use new language, different language, that is more accurate and truthful to the situation at hand, to make it plain and apparent and obvious and truthful and sincere, and not couched in like falsity. This, make sure that no one in the situation is wearing a mask. Don't allow anyone to put on a mask. Take that foundation away, replace it with a foundation where no one has the opportunity to even put on a mask. Like, clear things out. Clear the playing field, clear out the fog, turn all the lights on, make sure there are no dark corners or shadows or, where people can hide their intentions. Make it impossible for people to hide their intentions, whatever this is. This could be within yourself, just like illuminating your shadow and making sure you understand your own intentions with something you're doing, and don't try to appear like something you're not because you think it's more socially acceptable. Because in the long term, those things usually bite people in the butt, because what appears ethical and moral today, given the paradigm of our culture today, tomorrow is unethical and immoral. It's constantly changing. These trendy politics and trendy moralisms that we have are constantly changing. And if you take a strong stance on these things, and a strong public stance, because it's trendy, and you don't actually feel it, that might be a mistake. If you truly feel these convictions within your soul and spirit, and it's deep, and it comes from a really deep place within yourself, and to you it's a real sense of justice, and you think you're going to be consistent with it for your entire life, then yeah, by all means, declare it in public, make it the foundation of something. There's nothing wrong with that if you truly believe it's the right thing to do, whatever it is. From whatever point of view, from whatever moral or ethic point of view, it doesn't matter. If it feels like a truth to you, and a foundational truth at that, some code of conduct and a way of seeing things, and you feel like you're going to stick to it and that it's a real reality, then by all means, act on it and put it forth out into the world. But if you're doing it because it's a trend, or because you think it's going to make you look better, or it's going to increase your social status, or your social selection, your sexual selection, your financial viability, like if these are the reasons you're choosing certain beliefs or outlooks or morals or something like that, these are very bad reasons to pick a code of conduct, to cherry pick beliefs just for increased social selection and economic viability. It's not a good foundation, generally very short term, generally bites people in the butt, it can ruin reputations down the line. So make sure you're really convinced of these views. Or just make sure those around you are truly acting in accord with what they believe is the right thing to do. You don't have to agree with them, but as long as they truly believe it and they're not just doing it for social brownie points, then that's okay to have those disagreements because they're honest disagreements. But I'm getting the sense that there's some dishonesty here, there's some mask wearing, because I pulled an I Ching hexagram for you. We got 21, or eradicating. Forgive my awful pronunciation. But this is like an obstruction between the teeth, that the top and the bottom cannot come together until this obstruction is removed. So you have to bite through this obstruction so that people can come together, or that ideas can come together, so that a concept, a goal, a project, something can come together. There is something preventing union and harmony. And this could be a confusion of terms, or improper use of language, dishonest use of language, trying to redefine words when we all already know the definitions of these words, and people are trying to purposefully confuse the syntax just to achieve some sort of private goal of theirs. If you see this at this time, eradicate it. Point it out, shine a light on it, tell everyone who it's important to tell, everyone involved, be like, there's an unclear thing here. There is something that we're all confused about. Let's clear it up. And this is about administering justice by clearing this obstruction, or through administering justice, you will clear this obstruction. And that could be something like setting clear rules and punishing those who have broken the rules in an appropriate, compassionate, and educational way. Don't just punish people out of anger and vengeance or whatever, or because they're in your way or anything like that. Be like, no, look, these are the rules. You broke them. Here are the penalties. I'm carrying out the penalties. I'm sorry, but we all need to learn where the line is. We all need to learn how this works. And if people get away with breaking these rules all the time, then we don't have a coherent vision. We don't have a coherent goal. It all falls apart. So while I might not want to punish you, I have to. And it has to set an example for everybody, including yourself. And this could be something just going on in your own individual life, that maybe you've had like a lapse in some thing you decided you were going to do, right? You set out a goal for yourself and you had this process to follow through with it, and maybe you deviated from that process. And now you have to be like, oh, if I remember if I said I deviated from that, then I would do this. Like, if I ate that bowl of ice cream, then I was going to drink celery smoothies for 2 days. So now I have to drink those celery smoothies for 2 days. I have to stick to it. I have to really stick to my plan. And it could be like this sort of lighthearted self-punishment, right? As long as it's fair and appropriate, compassionate, and educational. Here, we're not talking about austere punishments. We're not talking about savagery or oppressing punishments. We're talking about stuff that's perfectly fair and appropriate, that no one's going to be shocked or disturbed by. You've got to find that balance here. Because here we have the two elements that make up this hexagram are fire above and thunder below. So that's fire in the mind and thunder in the belly, right? We have this clarity of thought, spiritualized thought, and resolute, firm activity, action. So those things in conjunction is like clear-sightedness with decisive action, like no hesitation. You know what needs to be done. It's clear. Everybody knows. There's no debate here. There were things that have to be carried out. There's punishments or penalties or clarifications or resetting of terms and tasks. We knew this would happen. If A, then B. A happened, therefore B must now be enforced. And you just have to do it without hesitating. You just got to do it now. Now's the time to set this all straight. And then, while I was going through the Yao text, the I Ching descriptions here, my attention was brought to this idea that, every revolution causes a counter-revolution. Now, when we write laws, let's say, or create these rules that everyone is expected to follow, and it's a new set of rules, the people who followed the old rules would be upset, right? So when we change something fundamentally that affects everybody, the people who benefited from the old way are going to be really upset about it. Every revolution causes a counter-revolution. But if it was the right thing to do to change these rules, to have this revolution, and the way that the counter-revolutionaries want to continue to behave in accordance with the old rules is breaking the new rules, again, the swift penalties need to be carried out. We all agreed these would be the new rules, or maybe you were outvoted or something like that, or these old rules caused the problem we're in now and we changed it to avoid the problem and you're still against it. Well, now you have to really do it in an educational atmosphere to really set an example of how these penalties get carried out with just compassionate educational mentality. And for some reason, my attention was also brought, I'm going to try to relate these, but it was a very powerful idea, to the fact that karma is actually more like a blind machine. And the oracle brought my attention to the principal Buddhist texts, the original Buddhist texts that were written by his disciples who were alive when he was alive, and just wrote down basically everything he said when he was giving his satsang, his sermons to the multitudes, particularly in the place called Deer Park in English. I forget what it's called in his native language, but we know it as Deer Park, this place where he used to gather with all of his listeners, answer questions to the crowd and whatnot. And there are a few principal texts. The Dhammapada has some of these direct quotes from him. There's also the Mahavagga, the Anguttara Nikaya, and the Majjhima Nikaya. So the Mahavagga, Anguttara Nikaya, and Majjhima Nikaya. These are the three principal earliest Buddhist texts that were written while Siddhartha Gautama was still alive. And these original texts are extraordinarily different from what modern Westerners believe Buddhism to be. Over the years, especially after the 18th century, when the West became much more secular and much more liberalized and much, shall I say, soft-hearted, and Buddhism came later in the 19th century into the West. These modern politics of the West sanitized the original Buddhist teachings, because the original Buddhist teachings are very harsh and very austere. For example, like a village finally caught this serial killer who was terrorizing this village for like 7 years, and they finally caught this guy. He'd killed maybe 24 people. And he was savage, absolutely savage. They finally caught him, and the village elders couldn't decide what to do with him. They all had different opinions. They didn't know what the right thing to do was. Capital punishment, eternal exile, rehabilitation, life sentence in prison. Like, what do we do here? None of them could decide. And so they went to the Buddha at Deer Park and asked him. And without skipping a beat, the Buddha just says, cut his head off. Yeah. A lot of people don't know these Buddhist texts or quotes because the modern West doesn't know what to do with them. It's kind of like how people like to cherry pick quotes from the New Testament, and they like to talk about the turn the other cheek Jesus, but then they don't talk about the beat the shit out of bankers with the whip Jesus. They don't talk about the sell all your stuff and buy a sword Jesus. They like to talk about the pacifist turn the other cheek Jesus. You can be harsh and not worry about karmic blowback. You can be severe. If somebody did something wrong, you have to be severe with them and carry out and enforce the law. It's utterly important because that actually doesn't create karma. People have this mistaken idea that if I enforce this sentence on this person, this sentence seems harsh to my modern moralisms because we don't do these things today, right? Like, decapitate someone for being a serial killer. Like, this is unheard of today. We don't do these things. And I'd feel bad if I were the executioner and I'm worried that I would gain bad karma if I did this. And we have all these ideas that, like, it's always wrong to commit violence, or it's always wrong to think these thoughts, or it's like, how do you reconcile the fact that this guy's a serial killer, needs to be punished, but as the punisher, I might incur bad karma upon myself. Now, if you read the original Buddhist text, there's nothing about an executioner incurring bad karma. In fact, executioners generally were considered people who neutralized bad karma by carrying out a swift punishment in the appropriate manner, according to what, the punishment fits the crime, right? And the executioner isn't angry. The executioner isn't vengeful. The executioner doesn't do this because he wants to, because he likes killing or whatever. He does it because he is simply an instrument of the state or the government, or he's an instrument of the local law enforcement or whatever it is, and he's simply protecting his community from this guy who is sentenced, and there's no emotionality in it. It's just, this is the consequences of your actions. And you're not going to incur bad karma for doling out the consequences of actions. And a lot of people like to have this hands-off pacifistic approach of, oh, they'll get what's coming to them. Yeah, maybe, but how do they get what's coming to them? Someone is going to do it to them. Someone is going to give them what's coming to them. And sometimes we have to be that person. Like, sometimes if we just are pacifists and say they'll get what's coming to them, but inside we feel this call, it's like, Am I the one who's supposed to give it to them? Do I give them what they have coming? Is that my job? Because it's somebody's job. So maybe it's not right to be a pacifist. At least that's my opinion most of the time. Like, pacifism is a surefire way to make sure you never have great grandkids, if you catch my meaning. Pacifism is an illness of the modern West. I think it's a way of self-destruction, and, well, we'll leave my opinions aside, but I think you have the opportunity and the responsibility to simply do what is right, set a good example, get the wheels turning again, put the machine back in order, and get things rolling the way they're supposed to roll for everybody's benefit. And you're not going to incur bad karma for carrying out what needs to be carried out and doing what needs to be done. These modern interpretations of these laws of karma, these Buddhist and Vedantic ideas, in my opinion, are incorrect. Because if you go back to the earliest texts, you will discover they are nothing at all like the like the modern interpretations. You know, maybe stop buying books from Oprah's book club and just go to the original principal texts. And now we're going to explore this a little further. I'm going to spin a coin. It'll land on one of these 24 symbols here. The oracle will have us focus on one of these symbols, one of these aspects of life and reality, and we'll pull some cards for you. So what does Leo need to know about all this, oracle? Well, it's on the symbol for Anael, or the planetary spirit of Venus. This divine feminine energy, this energy of love and compassion, of understanding, of nurturing. So yeah, we're really going back to that. Do what you're doing for the sake of educating everyone around you and having compassion and just being like, look, there was some wrongdoing here, and this is what happens. We're not doing this out of anger or vengeance. We're just doing this because we have to set a good example so that everyone here feels safer, so that everyone here can get back to what we were doing and have a harmonious life together, create more harmony in this group, ensure things like this don't happen in the future. That paves the way for a much better dynamic, a social dynamic or a working dynamic or whatever it is to have total compassion for this situation, for these people, for yourself, and carry out this justice, this judgment with love and in the educational mindset. Like detached. Don't be too emotionally invested in it unless that emotion is love and compassion and a desire to help everyone, including the person you're punishing. You know, a lot of the times when, like I said, a revolution causes a counter-revolution, it's because the counter-revolutionaries sometimes are just swept up in what benefited them and them alone. They are currently failing to see how the new rules are better, and they just need to, see the light, so to speak. Now, I know that sounds dangerous, like those 1984 re-education camps, and with modern politics the way they are, everyone's trying to re-educate each other because they think I'm right and you're wrong, and you just need to get educated. You know, that quote you see in internet arguments, just educate yourself. You just have to educate yourself. Not that attitude. That is a terrible attitude to have. Telling people to educate themselves. No. That is not what I'm talking about. Because punishment only educates if the punishment is appropriate. If it's for that moralism or for the public patting on the back, or to try and convince people that your morals and ethics are correct, that's not educational. You can judge a tree by the fruit it bears. Declaring your morals better than someone else's morals without actual proof is absurd. It's not about morals. This is about having a functioning dynamic within a group. Morals have nothing to do with that. So what does Leo need to know? Anael, the spirit of love and compassion. So we have the Five of Cups, In this deck it says loss in pleasure, or of pleasure? Loss in pleasure. So this, the Five of Cups, is generally being disappointed with something that you can clearly see, but still having resources to carry on. And sometimes being unaware of those resources because you're so disappointed in how some situation has unfolded and has maybe rocked the boat or destroyed some aspect of what you're working on. And there's a sense of wanting to just throw up your arms and give up. And, you just feel at a loss. You don't know, can I continue with something else? Can I continue with this? What do I do? This was really disappointing. This didn't work out the way I thought it was going to. But the thing is, you have these two cups still full behind you, these resources at your disposal. And it makes me think of like sacrificial vessels or ritual vessels where, the priest can't spill them, or a skilled priest doesn't spill them during the ritual because they represent a human being filled with the Spirit, like a cup being filled with water. And they perform the ritual without spilling the cup. And you've achieved that. There's the important aspects of what you're doing have not been ruined. There is just something else that was ruined, perhaps by a lapse in judgment or some type of wrongdoing or some type of unclear intention of either yourself or someone else. And it kind of like shook things up pretty seriously. And people or yourself or everyone might be like quite disappointed and unclear as where this is going to go now. But again, with this I Ching hexagram eradicating and this falling out on Anael, the spirit of Venus, I think it falls to you to come from a place of a lightheartedness and a sense of compassion to be like, no, everything's fine. Don't worry. We still have a lot left in these other two cups. We can continue. We can rebuild. We've got plenty in the foundation here. It's not over. We just need to straighten out this lapse here. We just need to rectify a situation. But there's still hope. There's still forward movement if we choose to have it. And I think you just have to inspire people. Come from the heart center and just fill their hearts with a sense of gladness and compassion in these difficult, severe times of needing to bite through an obstruction, carry out justice. It's all about doing it with a lighthearted mentality. I'll pull another card for you. This one. Rhythm. I feel like I've been pulling this one out a lot. Rhythm. Yeah. There's an up and a down to everything. There's a time to reap and a time to sow, a time for peace and a time for war. Maybe you just got to dance it out. Maybe dancing really helps you process emotions and get through difficult times. Of course, that can be a good thing anyway, even if you don't dance. If you have private time in your house and no one can watch you, just put on some music and dance it out. And it can just help you unblock obstructions. There are mystic traditions that are rooted on dance. They say you can achieve enlightenment through dance, like the Sufis and the whirling dervishes, the Gopila of the Krishna Vedantic tradition, sort of Krishna-oriented tradition. They do a lot of dance, and it can clear out the nervous system and the chakras of blockages that don't really belong there, that you just can't seem to clear out by thinking or by other techniques. Just putting on good music and getting the body moving and exercising in that way and experiencing just rhythmic bliss can just really refresh the mind and bring in a new renewed energy. And you'll find those last two cups, you'll be like, oh, it's not all ruined. This is just part of the rhythm of life. This is just part of the ups and downs of life, and anything worth doing is difficult. Anything worth doing has major setbacks. This is fine. This is just part of the process of life, of taking steps, of going through the rhythms of achieving the goal. And there's no problem here when you recognize that, oh, this is just the rhythm. This is just the breakdown before the chorus or whatever. It's really not that devastating. And again, just focus on that heart center, and yeah, just come at it with a lightheartedness of lightheartedly recognizing that this is a natural thing that occurred. This occurs a lot. This has occurred throughout history. This has occurred in other groups. This has occurred in other individuals. This isn't the end of the world. This is fine. It's just something we gotta deal with. So I'm gonna pull one last token for you. What does Leo need to know? Let's round out this reading here for Leo. Right at the top. Ooh, spooky. We got the specter. Yes, that's a big eyeball and a thing that looks like a flying saucer, and it's about to abduct maybe a cow or someone. Yes, I am a weirdo who carved this on a piece of wood. So the specter can sometimes indicate paranormal phenomena, just throwing that out there. If this is about some occult phenomena that you're dealing with, you know, you might be just going through a hard time with reconciling your past beliefs or your worldview. An experience occurred that has shaken you, and you don't understand it. Maybe your paradigm or your worldview has been drastically, confronted with a new reality. And your past beliefs, your past paradigm, your past views are now an obstruction to your further progress. And again, that's natural. Like, yeah, 5 of Cups, 3 of your cups spilled over. Your worldview has just like ruined. You realize a lot of your beliefs were wrong. But an honest person goes through this multiple times in their lives, where they come to new information, new knowledge, and it contradicts their previous worldviews. And we can choose to either do some mental gymnastics and hold on to our previous beliefs and worldviews, or we can accept it, allow those cups to spill over, get rid of those beliefs, and then refill those cups. Just allow that new knowledge to come in. Another thing is, this is kind of confirming what I was saying earlier, is that there is some type of deceitful energy wearing a mask. So a lot of the way I see, UFO phenomena and paranormal phenomena is that these things are not at all what they seem to be. Today, this phenomenon seems to want to convince us that it is aliens from other planets. That seems to be the mask that it wears, and it shows up to us in these ways where there's like robot aliens coming out of spaceships, and that's how the human nervous system interprets this event. But if you really study these events, you start to see absurdities and inconsistencies that are more in line with Irish folklore and fairy tales, that are more in line with ancient mythologies, more in line with psychological manifestations and compensations, and that the whole aliens from other planets concept starts to appear like an illusion. It starts to appear like a superficial mask that the phenomena wears in order to either hide itself or to engage in some sort of social engineering upon the human race. Anyway, that's like the starkest literal symbolism here. This could just be someone, like I was saying before, wearing a mask, hiding their real intentions, trying to confuse a group of people for brownie points or social lubrication or social status or economic expedience or something like that. Someone around you is not being clear with their intentions because they have a hidden agenda. They have another private goal that they're trying to accomplish here. And you are seeing through it. And it's probably your responsibility to just point it out and talk to it. Talk about it. Talk to it. Talk about it publicly with honesty, that truthfulness, that sense of education and compassion. Not to point it out like, ha ha ha, I see through you, but point it out because it's like, this doesn't seem right to me. I think something's wrong here. And just come at it from a place of honesty and sincerity and being like, I'm just trying to sort this out. I think there's something going on. I think what's going on is conflicting with the group or conflicting with our goals. I think we need to straighten this out and be honest about it, and then we can move on better for everybody's benefit. Maybe even the liar and deceiver, they might just be doing this out of a sense of self-preservation. They might not be bad people. They're just maybe afraid that their goals won't be met if they go along with the group, or they're afraid that they're going to be left on the wayside, or they're afraid that maybe that you think they're exposable or disposable, expendable or disposable. They might have these fears. And so to be clear about your intentions too with them might clear it up for them. It might be relieving for them too. They might be like, oh, I thought this, this, and that. I was paranoid about this. I thought that. So just having open communication might straighten this whole thing out. So don't be afraid to openly communicate at this time, and don't consider these people to have ill intentions. They could just be coming from a place of fear or a place of uncertainty. They might not be like super selfish. They're just concerned with their goals and with their well-being, and as we all have a right to be. But they don't have a right to disrupt a whole group dynamic to achieve this secret goal, even if it is well-intentioned for themselves. It has to be rectified. So again, purely for educational purposes, out of a sense of compassion, is how penalties need to be carried out. And I think it'll straighten out this whole situation here. So Leo, I think that's where the Oracle and I are going to leave it for you today. I really appreciate you hanging out with me. I always enjoy seeing you. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time.